When I wanted to get into sales, I was told, "Oh, you have a bit of an accent. I don't think you can." When I wanted to lead the Western region as a senior VP of sales, I was told it's impossible for me to do that. When I wanted to lead the entire company nationally, when I came to Toronto, I was told I can't. So when I even, funny enough, I tried to write the book and publish it with the largest publisher, Penguin Random House Canada, I was told that it is not possible. So when someone said no, I always heard yes. When someone said impossible, I heard possible.
Welcome back to the Sales Problem Podcast, and welcome to Season 2, Episode number 10. And this is the mailroom to the boardroom episode. You've heard of people overcoming adversity, persevering through life's struggles, but you have not heard from prisoner number 1056 yet. But this interview, you'll gain some knowledge and some wisdom from our guest on how to push through and succeed in life. I'm your host, Steve Comerford, and joining me is my co-host, the always tenacious and talented Daniel Burns. Dan, how are you today, and what is in your coffee mug?
Tenacious and talented Steve, I'll take it. It's
You're welcome.
2024. It is 2024, Steve, and what a year 2023 was. We did so much happened. We've got these new Sales Problem Podcast mugs.
Cheers.
And we've sampled how many coffees, Steve? About probably 12 plus.
Yeah, I'd say so.
That we've tried in search of finding a really great coffee for our listeners. We're doing what every great salesperson really does, right? We go out and we look at all the possible solutions and all the possible products, and we narrow it down for our listeners to something that's really exceptional, Steve. And I'm excited for 2024 because I think we found the best one. You had the highest rating for Crank Coffee, and we've got all Crank Coffees cranking it up for 2024. I'm excited, ready to go. And even more exciting than our coffee, Steve, I've also got the book. I've got Roy's book beside me. I've been reading it, and I am so excited for this podcast because not only is the coffee getting great, our guests are getting fantastic. So our listeners are in for a real treat. Try the Morning Glory, crank it up, and get ready for an unbelievable episode. What do you got in your cup, Steve?
How much coffee have you had? Because you seem like you're amped up and ready to go.
I am amped. I'm ready to go, Steve. Let's do this.
I got a little cranky pants, Dan, but it's contrary to the name of the coffee. It's actually quite smooth. It's a nice, relaxing, kind of ease into your day kind of coffee. So I like it. I'm not going to give it a rating because, Roy, you'll find out that we give some sort of number, but I just like this one. Okay. It's a good one. But Dan,
yes,
onward from the coffee. Let's get talking about our guest today.
Crank it up, Steve.
Okay, let's go. Our guest today is Roy Ratnavel. Roy was born in 1969 in the capital city of Colombo, Sri Lanka. At the age of 17, he became a political prisoner and spent grueling months in brutal and oppressive conditions. After his miraculous release from prison, he arrived in Canada all alone at the age of 18 with $50 in his pocket, then rose from the mailroom to the boardroom, along with a whole number of jobs as a 18, 19, and 20-year-old, I would say. Ratnavel is now retired and now a retired Bay Street executive who was the vice chairman of Canada's largest independent asset management company. Roy is also the recipient of Report on Business's Canada's 50 Best Executives 2020 award. He's involved in many philanthropic causes, including the 2019 successful summit of Mount Kilimanjaro to bring awareness and shatter the stigma surrounding mental illness and to raise money for the fight against this debilitating health issue. He's a mentor to many emerging young leaders in the asset management business, He's a keynote speaker, best-selling author. Obviously, we mentioned Prisoner 1056, which actually became a number one best-selling book in Canada. And I wanted to actually read one of the forewords here that Jeff Rubin wrote about the book. He said, "Pick up this book and you'll feel like taking on the world. Roy Ratnavel's story proves that you really do make your own luck, that you really can make it to the top with hard work, and that there are still people out there with the courage to speak their minds." An exciting, thoughtful, inspiring read. I think both you and I, Dan, got a lot from this book. So very excited to have Roy on the show. Whew.
It's great. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dan and Steve, for having me.
Thank you for being here, Roy. We're very excited to talk to you. We talked a little bit about your book. Share with our listeners a little taste of that book. We'll explore some questions through our interview, but specifically from your time in Sri Lanka to immigrating to Canada, from the mailroom to the boardroom, it's quite an exciting journey. So, can you share a little bit there? And first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I hope year is off to a great start to you and the listeners. And it's going to be another exciting year, I believe. And 2023 was for me an excellent year. I retired from the business. I've been working since I was 18 years old, so I've been working for 35 years nonstop. And it's nice to take a break and do these kind of podcasts and other things. So I'm really excited. I know you did give a little intro about my past, so I don't want to repeat that. But I did grow up during a civil war in Sri Lanka. And in sort of late 80s, 87 to be precise, I was arrested at the age of 17, sent to a prison where I endured many torture and saw people die around me. So when I was accidentally, I was able to, or miraculously, as you put it, when I was able to leave the prison, my father decided that there's no opportunity for a young boy like me in that country, and decided that Canada might be that land of opportunity, and sent me out to Canada in 1988. So I landed in Toronto on April 18th, 1988, 6 years ago now. And how right he was in his assessment about the opportunities in Canada for a young boy like me. But coming to Canada without being able to speak English that well, not knowing the culture, not knowing anyone, certainly presented a monumental challenge for someone like myself, who was only 18 years old. So just like any other immigrant who would come to this country, I started doing, menial jobs. And I had 3 different jobs, and I would work in a factory, then clean buildings at night, and work as a security guard in the weekends. I was 120 pounds soaking wet. I'm sure people were very scared of me as a security guard. But interestingly enough, I was cleaning a building at Scotiabank building at King and Bay, right in the heart of Bay Street. And many of Torontonians will know where that building is, 44 King Street West. As I was cleaning that building, I remember seeing a corner office, massive office with anything you can think of, a boardroom. I had this fridge, a nice desk, couches. And I was thinking, as an 18-year-old boy, as I was cleaning that building, you know what, I should aspire to this one day. So a few weeks later, I quit everything I did, and I started to look for a job somewhere on Bay Street. And that's how I got into this small asset management firm. And I was able to get a job as a mailroom clerk. And the one thing I learned coming to Canada, to a free country like this, from a country was an authoritarian country, is that humans should be guaranteed only 2 things: freedom and choice. In Canada, I was given those 2 rights. The last freedom a person has is the right to choose their own actions, and the responsibility to accept the consequences of those actions. To that end, I was rewarded for the good choices I made and penalized for the bad ones. Well, that's the price of freedom. Thankfully, though, I made more good choices than bad ones, which propelled me from the mailroom to the boardroom. In that sense, I would say my book, Prisoner Number 1056, is not a book of suffering, rather a book of success. It really celebrates the resilience of the human spirit.
Yeah, I want to just really congratulate you, Roy, on having such a fantastic book. And I know it takes courage and it takes vulnerability to really share your story, to put it out there in the world. But I want to tell you how well it was received by me. And one of the things that I can tell you is I had this pen and I kept underlining things in the book and dog earing the book because I wanted to come back. It was filled with so many great things. So this is the moment in our podcast, Roy, where we let you just kind of, choose the number one thing that you want our listeners to know about you, about success in business. It's the drop the mic moment. What's the one thing that you want to get across to our listeners, more than anything?
I would say stay away from negative people, especially stay away from those who have never succeeded, because they are the one always first to tell you that you can't. Uh, I always said don't take criticism from anyone who you wouldn't take any advice from, because every time I try to do something big, I always say don't dream small, dream big, because if your dreams are not making you sleep, or if your dreams are making you sleep, then they aren't big enough. So every time I try to do something big, there are always naysayers. All I heard was you can't. When I wanted to get into sales, I was told, "Oh, you have a bit of an accent. I don't think you can." When I wanted to lead the Western region as a senior VP of sales, I was told it's impossible for me to do that. When I wanted to lead the entire company nationally, when I came to Toronto, I was told I can't. So when I even, funny enough, I tried to write the book and publish it with the largest publisher, Penguin Random House Canada, I was told that it is not possible. So when someone said no, I always heard yes. When someone said impossible, I heard possible. So the mic drop moment for me, and I think people should probably take this to heart, is that ignore other people's criticism, because most of them, quite frankly, gents, have no idea of what they're doing. So just believe in yourself, give it a go. Success is not guaranteed, but the input that you are going to, the input that you can control, outcome you can, but you have to do your best to try to get to the goals that you set for yourself.
I love it. I love it. I think so many people will try to tell us that we can't do
Right.
something. So it's such great advice to really keep that faith and believe in yourself. And you've shown such tenacity. I'd like to go the opposite way now. So we all have the best intentions. We
Yep.
always think we're going to go in and we're going to, get up to the plate. We're going to hit that home run.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it doesn't really work out that way. Sometimes we strike out. Sometimes we head down the track and it actually turns into a train wreck. So I'm interested to know from you, Roy, tell our listeners about a time where you had the best intentions for it to work out and be successful, but something happened, derailed you. And what's the lesson that is a takeaway for our listeners in that?
Yeah, I know what you're referring to. This almost has PTSD for me. I was in Toronto. I was in an inside sales desk, and then I was given a chance to go out west in 1998. I was never given a sales training, nothing. It was just like, here's your credit card, here's your phone, go get it. And so I was in Vancouver. I set up a meeting with my very first meeting as a salesman. And I thought I was prepared, maybe a little cocky. I was 28 years old, or 29. And I knew my subject matter. I knew that hands down, but I just didn't. The hard skill I knew, but the soft skill I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So first meeting, 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, I show up and And I start firing off about all these stats, the equity markets, and all these things, not realizing that people need to first like you to do business with you. So it was I call it the telling moment. Like, telling is not selling. And I was telling the client what he should be doing. And it didn't really land well to a very seasoned investment advisor. And as I was talking, I can see his body language wasn't friendly, and it was turning. He was looking agitated, and I stopped and I asked him, um, what can I do to earn your business? He basically said flat out, nothing. You bring me nothing to the table. And it
Ouch.
was like 18 minutes into the meeting. It was just done. And I was absolutely crushed. And my confidence level went from a 10 to a 0 like that. I remember as I was walking out, I couldn't process what just transpired, but I knew I screwed up. So I said to myself from that day on, I'm going to learn to first win people over before I talk business. And that's not to say that you need to spend 10 minutes chatting about their life, but there's a way to become good at mastering the art of soft skill. You heard this expression before. People may not remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And I think the important thing about sales is making people feel comfortable and to like you first before they can actually listen to you. And so that's a lesson I learned. Never again I made the mistake, and it's been pretty good ever since.
Well, I'm curious on this your tour in Western Canada, and you write in your book about a number of memorable relationships that you built.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe after that meeting, you got you got better at building those relationships, but you
Right.
obviously had some early challenges. Like how did you then create that successful portfolio out west, working the roads, making those calls? How did that go? And I'll add one other thing, Dan. You don't
Uh-huh.
know this, but Roy and I share that we both worked in a mailroom. So
Oh,
just
nice.
wanted to share.
That's
There we
Anyway,
go.
the
but
rite of passage in our
I
business.
think it is. You grind
Yeah.
it through your 20s. Uh, but
Right.
uh, but back to Western Canada. Tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I was in Western Canada, I didn't have the metropolis like Vancouver or Victoria. I had the hinterlands, right? Like Prince George, Smithers, and Nelson. These are rural part of British Columbia, and for the most part, I was very unique to that market because my skin tone doesn't match the majority in town. So I was certainly not someone that they would have expected to see as a um, wholesaler or a salesman coming to talk to them. But one thing I learned over the years is that regardless of people's background, there's a basic universal truth. We always have more in common than different across all races, religions, and even political ideologies. Sometimes, if you break down the barriers to see someone as purely as human, and then that feeling can unite people beyond race, religion, other superficial markers, I call it. In fact, that's the theme also running through my book. The reason that I'm alive today is because of that human connection. And I think I was able to understand that very earlier on and be able to make those connections regardless of my clients are certainly they don't look like me, they're not from the part of the world that I am from, but we were able to make that human connection at a deeper level. As I said, people need to first like you to and trust you to be able to do business with you. And I'm not trying to do transactional relationship. I want transformational relationship that could last for years. And in fact, some of the former clients are some of my best friends, and I know their family, the kids. They come and stay at my house. When I go out west, I stay at their house. And so, I think that, sometimes, we should pay attention to the fact instead of deepening our past divisions, we need to strengthen our present bonds. I think that's the message forget the business part of it, just generally as human beings, I think we are so focused on paying attention to the past divisions, and there are many, but instead of forming present bonds. And I think that's what I focused on, and that really helped me to build these long lasting business slash friendship over the years.
I think you mentioned it earlier, the message that kind of is consistent through your book. I've listened to some of your other interviews, and you continue to have that message in terms of building those bonds and moving forward with very similar backgrounds that everybody has, and working together. But you mentioned in your book too about 3 things that you've learned from your father, or your father taught you. And that definitely helped you working in the roads in Western Canada and getting to the executive boardroom. Can you share those 3? I think it was 2, 3, or 4, key things that he taught you and that really resonate today.
Right. The interesting things about my father is that he never left Sri Lanka, but he had traveled outside of Sri Lanka through books, and he's an avid reader, classical English literature, and he was one of my first mentor, someone I looked up to. He had sort of 3 key themes. He would say, he would tell me, look, you could have the best idea in the world, but if you don't know how to communicate, you have no idea. So try to learn to communicate better. Communication is like laws of physics. It applies everywhere. That's the first thing. So when I came here, I focused on how to get my message across in a very succinct, thoughtful manner to people who are listening to what I'm saying. The other thing is differentiation. 9 out of 10 human interactions are not memorable at all. So how do we become memorable? If you think about salespeople, all kind of look the same, dress the same, say the same thing. So why is someone different than the other? So the important thing is to really differentiate yourself in the marketplace. The animal kingdom, animals blend in the environment to survive. Humans, on the other hand, need to stand out to be noticed. So differentiation is important, he used to tell me. The other is appreciation for things, appreciate things. Have an attitude of gratitude, because if you're not grateful, you're not happy. And I have never met a ungrateful, successful person. I think we need to be appreciative of our client's business, the country we live in, our family, and to really appreciate those relationship. It really molds you into a hopefully a complete person. And so communicate, differentiate, appreciate, the 3 things that I learned from my father.
I hope our listeners go back and just rewind that a little bit, because that is so fantastic in terms of advice for our listeners. And Steve mentioned Roy, your father. And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed reading in the book, was hearing the advice that came from your dad. And then there was that kind of mentorship that was happening. And then later in the book, it was Bill Holland that really, passed along a lot of advice to you. So I'm wondering what you tell our younger listeners about the importance of a mentor and that mindset of seeking out or finding somebody that can pass things along versus you trying to go out and take on the world yourself.
Beside my father, when I came to Canada, and I was just a young kid, completely lost. So when I started in this mailroom, I ran into this gentleman named Bill Holland. At the time, he was a up-and-coming salesman, and I was the mailroom kid. And 10 years apart, I'm 10 years younger to him, and he took a shine to me for whatever reason. It is rare to find someone who believes in you even more than you believe in yourself, and that's the case there with Bill and I at the time. And I was so fortunate to have met him. He taught a young kid from a war-torn country that world is not necessarily a bad place, and nudged my life in a better direction. I still, after 34 years of our friendship, mentorship, I say still even now that he's my mentor, my friend, disciplinarian, cheerleader, all in one. We still meet once a month and chat, or at least talk once a week. It would be impossible to count all the ways he had helped me since I arrived in Canada. He was everything one could look for in a good mentor, because he would actually be very honest, and he will chastise me when he needed to, and cheer me when he thought I deserved it. I actually believe, for the listeners here, that effective mentorship happens organically. It happens without you realizing it. That was certainly my case. It must be natural and not forced. Everyone has at least one person they admire, someone to look up to and to learn from, and someone who walks alongside us and guides us on what we can do. And that's the case that I had with Bill, and to date, thankfully, he's still part of my journey. And I think you need to find that person. As I said, it can be forced; it has to be organic.
Such a great message. And the piece that I pick out of that, Roy, I hope there are some sales managers or leaders that are listening to this podcast, because having somebody believe in you can make all the difference.
100%.
And if there's a manager listening right now and you've got somebody and you haven't communicated to them maybe that you believe in them. Funny enough, Roy, Steve was my first manager.
Oh.
And he actually said, hey, I believe you can be a superstar. Right. And I didn't have any other frame of reference. I believed him. I don't know if I should have, maybe, but I did. And
he's a good salesman.
There we go. It made all the difference. And kind of like your relationship with Bill, we're still friends today. So I totally believe in mentors and everything you say about having those positive people around you.
100%.
Yeah.
I still believe in you,
to
Dan.
a quote. Fantastic. I need it, Steve. So, Roy, there was a quote in your book that really stood out to me, and I want to read it for our listeners. You said, "I'm not a fan of copying from C students. I'm a fan of copying from A students." And I thought that was just so brilliant. But the question I've got for you is, you seem like such an individual, such a unique individual. And that concept of copying off somebody and not reinventing the wheel and just looking and saying, what can I take from somebody's style, but then creating your own.
Right.
Give me your perspective on that and for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a risk in acting like someone, because then you're not your own self. But, and as I said, the line that I used in the book is, I've said it so many times, but I thought that line should go in the book, is that I'm not a fan of copying from C students. I'm a I'm a fan of copying from A students. In my case, I admired, Bill Holland, my mentor, and in a deep level, I wanted to be like him, just like him, because I knew that he was on a trajectory of success. I could see the man. I wanted to dress like him, exude confidence like him, fit in like him, be able to hold an audience like him and speak like him. And these are from a vantage point of keep in mind, like a 19, 20-year-old broken kid. And I'm just looking at this guy and going, man, I want to be like that guy. Be a man like him, not a boy like I was at the age of 19. Be a lion, I always say, not a lamb. And I was a lamb. Yeah, I'm not a fan of copying from C students. I like to copy from A students because success leaves clues. And Bill, as I said, was on a solid path to success. And my advice to people is copy those who have done what you want to do, but do it in your own unique way. You don't want to be carbon copying them. Then people think you're imitating somebody. But take the good attributes from those people and sort of apply to enhance your skill and to reach that goal. And that's sort of what I did. And I don't want to come off like mini Bill, but people do see the personality traits, and sometimes osmosis. You're so much believe in somebody, sort of copy some of their traits, and which I apparently have from observers. But you want to be yourself at the same time.
Today, there are just so many examples of different role models that are out there, and we've got access to seeing people in video and on podcasts and things. There's so much content out there where we can have some amazing role models in our lives. And I just love that advice about mentors and about role models and not starting from scratch. You've got some people that you can emulate and then put your own style on it.
But, I always said that nobody makes it in this world by alone. I mean, you need help with the family, mentors, friends, and in my case, all of the above. And I think we need the support, and that's what gets people to be the best at their game. And certainly that was the case in mine.
Well, I'll just share one little story on this vein, Roy. So when I started in sales, there were a lot of people that said, "Are you sure, Steve? That doesn't seem to be your thing. I don't know how that's going to work out, right?" So there are always doubters. All those doubters. And I struggled at the beginning because it was a sense of, okay, here's your price book. There's your accounts that you need to call on. Good luck. And, come back at 5 and let me know how it goes. So that was the level of training. It wasn't until I had to kind of bottom out in that scenario to then get to sit beside the top rep in the country. And I was able to just listen, absorb, just pull in his little notes, his little ways of delivering, setting up meetings, how he handled meetings. Mike Allen is the gentleman's name, but I don't think he knew at the time that he was a mentor to me. But I definitely owe a lot of my success to those early days.
Organic, just like I was saying to you earlier. I agree. It's a very organic way of looking at somebody and learning from them.
Yeah. I'll have to give a hashtag to Mike on the podcast, Dan.
You should.
Hey, but Roy, I wanted to get to one of the chapters in the book, and that was chapter 8. And you had just returned from a trip to Sri Lanka after a number of years, and it was a challenge, I'm sure, to go back. And you reference a Tamil saying, when the water is above your nose, it doesn't matter if it's an inch or a foot. Tell us about that time in your life, and how did you get back above water?
Yeah, that was a crossroad in my life. That was about 2000, 2001, 2002, around that time. So 98 is when I went out west, and the timing was perfect because if you remember, from 95 to 2000, NASDAQ went from 1,000 to over 5,000. So tech stock they were just ripping. And CI had my company had amazing lineup of product that focused in that technology, telecom, biotech space. So the flow was unreal. And personally, I invested my own money in tech stocks. And so everything was up and up. And the dot-com bubble then burst between 2001 and 2002 with equities entering a bear market, a very harsh one, very quick. Stocks I own dropped as much as 85%. And my company stock also came down drastically because our AUM just dropped. My options were all out of the money overnight. I was forced to sell my holdings to meet the daily margin calls, which was terrifying every time you get the call from a broker saying, and I could see the number, and I know the heart drops as soon as you see it, because I needed to come up with money, a resource that I was running out very fast. And I found myself in a negative net worth territory. I went from having a nice net worth to negative net worth within a couple of months. And I committed a cardinal sin in investing. The saying is to become rich, specialize, which I did, but to stay rich, diversify, which I didn't. And I was not diversified. And basically, I was completely bankrupt. And So this is the time I thought, oh my God, I'm completely done here. Financially, I was literally destitute. I mean, I had loans owing at the bank, and I have no net worth or no assets. Anyway, so I thought I'm just going to go back to Sri Lanka and sort of travel the country and try to put myself back together. And I went there and realized that, still Canada had massive opportunities for someone like me. And I decided to come back. I wasn't going to go stay there, but I just want to travel through just to get perspective, because all in life is about perspective. And I got the perspective that I needed to come back and try to win the game again. And so when I came back, and I remember that there was an energy boom, oil went to over $100, and driven by China, and so I could see the pros were investing mainly in energy sector, and I started investing back slowly into the energy, oil and gas sector personally for me. And also at the same time, because the company was started investing in that, our assets started growing again, our stock came back in price and options came into money. So there's some luck and some skill. And this time I had decided not to repeat my mistakes of the past in regards to my investments. And I started diversifying more out and be less greedy and more thoughtful. The saying goes that bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. I got slaughtered. So that was a lesson that I learned, expensive one, and never repeat it again.
Roy, do you own a surfboard? Because it feels like you're a surfer. You just kind of catch the wave, and then sometimes the wave crashes, and then you get back on your board and you get back out and try to catch another wave.
I should try that.
Big baby.
But life sometimes is random. I mean,
Yeah.
To me, like I learned something in life is that path to happiness begins and ends in your mind. End of story. And money is important, obviously. Anyone who says money doesn't buy happiness, they don't know where to shop. But money doesn't solve all your problems. And it really, that experience certainly grounded me to really start to think about, I wouldn't say spiritually, that's such a cliche word, but just more aware of what I needed to do in life. It's not just driven just by money. There are other things in life that's important too. And I would say one thing too, it made me a better person because I had this drive to be successful that when I came to Canada on April 19th, 1988, 2 days after my father was shot and killed in Sri Lanka. That was a huge blow to me. So when he died, my first mentor, my dad died. Part of me died with him. The other part of me became a fighter. The reason for that is I remember him telling me at the airport when I left Sri Lanka, at the Colombo airport, he said, I want you to go to Canada and take maximum advantage of the opportunities that country provides. Don't survive, but live. And that's the key word, live, not survive. So when he died, I felt like I needed to live for two people. I thought if I did well enough in life, I could give the life he should have had. And that became coal for furnace of my ambition per se. And everything was based on that. Just drive hard and be successful. In that process, I became like a robot. I had no emotion about anyone else, about me all the time. So a very narcissistic pursuit, which got me into the mess that I got into. I was not nice to people in that sort of path to success. And this really knocked me down about 10 pegs and gave me a little more perspective in life, and which made me into hopefully a better person than I was, then.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, Dan. The people we talk to, I feel the theme of the podcast is almost a mindset. It's almost what goes on between your two ears a lot of the time. Roy, you mentioned that, I think,
right.
and having to then regroup and go back and try to live your life. I'll go to another chapter in the book, and that's chapter 9, and the rebuild. It sounds like another stage in your life where you were, it was the final stages of the war in Sri Lanka. You were having a really tough time as a leader. You lost team members. The knives were out for you. I feel like that's happened to me. Anyway, but how did you feel at that time? Because again, you regrouped from the time when your father had passed away. Now you're back at it again, and you're a leader. Tough time, people leaving. How did you rebuild it? And it was significant because you went from a few $billion in assets to over 40. Like you grew that team substantially. But how did you get past that early stages of that challenge?
Yeah, that's a great question, and again, it's another stage in my life where I learned a lesson about leading and managing teams. I for a long time I lived a two lives, right? One here, one that I left behind, and so whatever that went on in Sri Lanka got me distracted of what I needed to do in Canada, and in that sort of stage, I was failing. Um, at the time, I didn't know, but looking back now, I certainly failed colossally as a leader. But in the interest of full disclosure, that 40 billion you talked about was due to combination of many factors. There were some M&A activities, CI bought companies, so that brought some assets. So it's not organic growth, and the market appreciation was part of it. Of course, there was a massive sales momentum. I wouldn't take that away from my team. Western team was at the time was just humming along when I decided to sort of get back in the leadership seat again. So having said that, the thing about failure is that it's bound to happen at some point in life. You'll embarrass yourself. I had. There was no doubt about that. Every person has some talent, or even perhaps the training to succeed. But do you have the guts to fail? And I have, tried, failed many times. But so I wanted to try again to be a better leader in the West. And so I had to take the risk. And by taking the risk, as I revamped the team, started looking for talent, and I became really good at spotting talent. This probably one of my unique characteristics where I could sort of sit across people and go, I need this person on my team. And so I was able to build this team sort of based on that. And it became a rock star team. This on my second try by being also an empathetic leader. And I was so self-absorbed during the war. And so I always said that managers do things right. I was a manager, not a leader, because leaders do the right things. So I had to learn to do the right things for my team members as opposed to doing things right. So that is the huge shift, going from a manager to a leader. And often I work with a lot of managers, not leaders. They just do things right. They don't do the right things. And so that is sort of became my mantra. And I have learned one thing from leading teams over the years is that even with good intentions and planning and positive input from people around you, victory always came down to having a will to win. That willingness to win is what made it happen. And it was a collective team effort. And it became a model for the company about what just happened in Western Canada. How do we replicate that across the country was sort of the talk. And so I was delighted to be in that sort of position after failing miserably previously.
I love everything you're saying, Roy, especially the willingness to win and building a great team. And it's such a great feeling when you do build that great team and you see it all come together. And that shift between manager and leader is so critical.
Yeah, then it's also like when you see your team win, like they get married, bought a house, they're happy, having a kid. You're happy for them. It sort of becomes, not to sound cliches, but sort of family, and you looked after each other. It's like it's a team, and it was. It's also sometimes I find is better to be away from the head office setting because you can actually build your own sort of culture, and that I was lucky to be 5,000 kilometers away and three time zones away to be able to build that, and it is such a great feeling.
Well, I can share with you, Roy, that transition has happened for me too, going from the early part of my career, really being focused on achievement and, making sure I won all the awards and, make sure you get top salesman and all that. Yeah. And then at some point it did shift to contribution and it became about the team, about other people. And I resonate that watching somebody else get the award, sometimes is actually way more fulfilling than you getting upstage. And that shocked me. I didn't see it coming. I never would have thought that would be fulfilling. And then I went, oh, geez, that's kind of nice. And how do I do more of that contributing to others?
Right.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit because we talk a little bit on the podcast about health and making sure that if you're out there selling, you can't make calls from a hospital bed. You have to stay in shape. You have to make sure you take care of yourself. And one of the things in the book, you talked about being a 120-pound security guard, but then you shifted a little bit in the book talking about fitness and about getting up early. And I share those things. I love fitness. I'm a personal trainer and I believe in getting that in. And I wake up at 4. I'm ready to go. I know not everybody listening thinks about that, but share with them what you think is important about some of those things to creating success in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I should use you as my personal trainer next time, I guess. I'm looking for one.
Hey, all right, we'll book it.
Like when I was running this team, even before that, I started waking up at 4:30 in the morning. And it gave me a couple of things. It's just I needed to get up before everybody else, and then I would spend some time looking at the overnight market, see what happened, and know about what happened in sports, what happened in politics, what happened in just markets, just to have enough information for me to have normal conversation with people. But more importantly, I thought how I dressed and looked could have a big impact on my self-esteem and confidence. So you do it for yourself first. So if I dressed and stayed in top physical shape in a way that made me look like I was at the top of my game, I would be more likely to feel that way too. And it's true. Like they say healthy mind, healthy body is healthy mind. And so that's what got me into, I was a skinny kid, as you mentioned, as I said earlier. And I wanted to put on some muscle mass and I wanted to be able to fit better in my suits and more importantly, just to feel better and to have that confidence. So one of the reasons I work out so hard is because when I work out really, really hard every morning, I have respect for myself. For that day, I know I'm not a lazy person. For that day, I know I'm focused and for that day, I know who I am and I can get things done. It gives me or gave me self-respect because before success, one must have to self-respect themselves. And for me, that's what it's about. If you feel happy, if you feel good about it, then you can project that positive energy when you're in meetings. Nobody wants to listen to a down and out salesperson. You have to be positive, not Pollyanna. You have to be pragmatic, but you got to be positive. And I tell my sales team all the time, guys, don't go into people's meetings, talk about how miserable your life is. Nobody likes a miserable person to come into their office. So that's sort of what got me into that. And I still maintain the same schedule, even though I don't have to wake up that early, but I still wake up early enough to be able to hit the gym first and get that out of the way. And it just sets you for a better day is my take, and it makes you more productive.
Yeah, I really love the mindset of it all. Feeling that you've got a bit of a jump on the world.
Right.
You've got some time ahead of you where you can prepare for the day. And like you said, you've got some work in, you've got some work done, you're ready to go, and you've got that positive mindset. Before I ask the next question, I want to come back to something that you said that I think is one of the best things that has been said on the podcast.
Mm.
You said the path to happiness begins and ends in your mind.
Yeah.
And this is where we're at right now, is that mindset. And we've had so many people on, like you mentioned, Steve, that come back to mindset and that being the differentiator. So I just want to point that out to our listeners, that cultivating that mindset in 2024, read the book, read Roy's book, listen to these podcasts, because we keep bringing on people that can help you set the mindset that differentiates your results in 2024. Roy, what did I miss? What should Steve and I have asked you that we haven't asked you yet? There's something probably that's important to our listeners. What would you say we've missed so far?
I mean, look, I think you're asking the right questions, and I would say one thing is that, I mean, I've been thankfully successful in everything I've tried to do, whether it's with career, whether it's writing a book. But one thing you don't want to ever forget is that humans are flawed, and no one is perfect. I'm constantly learning, making mistakes, hopefully a lot less than I used to. Because to me, hubris kills cultures, countries, and careers. And I've seen it. In life, we never know if you are at the peak or the trough. So be humble, stay hungry, and stay laser focused. Always outwork everyone and everything, because there is dignity in hard work. And that would be my sort of overarching message. Everything I achieved in life has some bit of a luck to it. Obviously, we need luck, but luck alone is not going to get you there. Hard work will. And I can tell you, hard work doesn't guarantee the outcome that you're looking for, but it can increase the odds of the outcome that you're looking for. And that would be my sort of take on that.
Well, I've got one more question, Dan. And that is, Roy, you're retired, but I doubt that you're retired. It seems like you're busier now than you were probably before. But I want to dial in on maybe some of the work that you're doing on the mental health side of it, mental well-being. You're doing some philanthropic work there. Can you share a little bit more about that? Because I think that's really, again, a prominent theme and something that is important these days.
Yeah. So personally, my mom, kind of put this in the book, suffered severe mental illness throughout her life, and to me, it's one of them. It's a taboo in any culture, and especially in our culture. And I wanted to bring awareness to the suffering of people, mental suffering of people, and it's not noticeable. I mean, if I said I have cancer, I'll get sympathy right away. But not necessarily if you had mental illness. And I think there's a misunderstanding. So I wanted to bring awareness to that. Hence I did the summit of Kilimanjaro. And I still work with charities that focus on, there are many great charities, but this is a personal thing for me. And also I mentor a bunch of young people in the business. One of our former chairman of CI, Raymond Chang, was instrumental in my life too. And I had many mentors, and he was one of them. And one day I said to Ray, how do I repay you? You've done so much for me. And he said, Roy, do what I did to you to someone else, and that's how the legacy goes. And so I took that to heart, because growing up in war taught me many lessons in life. I almost died twice in my life, survived imprisonment, survived torture, survived a brutal civil war, though I had already danced with death twice by a very young age, um, and I am still the living. And so I have this, in some way, they call it survivor's guilt. Because I had seen enough death to appreciate the value of life. I learned that human spirit can endure a lot. Um, it is very resilient, but it can be broken, but not easily. And in that respect, I retired from the industry, but not from life, I always say. I truly believe in the final analysis. It is not the accolades that you take with you, but the impact you leave behind on this world. And to that end, it really had made me more conscious, I would say, of life and how I want to spend the rest of mine with a purpose, to make the most of it by empowering and inspiring others. And you're right, I'm more busier now in my retired stage of life than when I was working. When I was working, I had, just one purpose, which is to drive the business and manage a team. Here, I'm doing many different things, and I love it. It gives me, Viktor Frankl, who was this Holocaust survivor, said that humans need purpose in life, and you take the purpose away, they become miserable. And so when I say I'm retired, I'm not sitting on couch and eating bonbons and watching Netflix. Although I like that sometimes, but generally I'm out doing these things. So I'm just thrilled by this stage.
Well, it's you come across and you share those stories and where you are today in your life. It comes across very genuinely and authentic. So, we talked a few months ago. We invited you to the show. I made sure that we read the book from cover to cover, and blown away from the interview today, Roy. Really appreciate your time. Your insights are top shelf. I hope that the listeners today, there's probably 18 or 19 things they could walk away with, but if they could walk away with one or two, that was our purpose in putting this podcast together. So I think there's a plentiful array of things that they could, that you've shared that will, I think, have an impact in their lives. So I appreciate that. Really, really appreciate that.
That's very nice of you to say that. Thank you so much for having me.
And last but not least, where can people get a hold of you? How can they track you down? I know that you're doing keynotes, and the book obviously has come off the shelf.
Yeah.
Are you still looking at Matt Damon for the lead role, or where are you there?
Maybe Mark Wahlberg. He needs to get a deep tan and get in shape.
Okay.
And get in shape. Listen, I really appreciate you having me, both of you having me on, and you can buy the book on Amazon, Indigo, Chapters, or any bookstore that sells good books. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it on audiobook version in my deep voice. I did my own audiobook. You can do that. And or you can wait and watch the movie one day. But yeah, and you can contact me on LinkedIn, Roy Ratnavel, or go to royratnavel.com. It's RoyRatnav as in Victor EL.com. You'll see some of my stuff there, and also you can send me a message through there. There's an email. And if I could say something to close off, is that okay to say something? I would say something in the sense that what I learned is that the first indicator of success is individual decision making. That's it. Don't co-sign to groupthink. Hard work wins. And you can't control the outcome, but you are 100% in charge of the effort. Before you whine about your life, go to the nearest mirror and take a good look at yourself and ask, what could I have done to change the outcome? Because at the end of the day, you are in charge of your own self and your life. So Go out there and get it.
That's awesome. I really want to encourage our listeners to go get the book, Prisoner 1056. We've talked a lot about business today, but I can tell you, my takeaway was just the triumph of the human spirit. And I want to tell you, Roy, that you are going to inspire a lot of people through this book with everything that you've gone through. So you definitely inspired me. So thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.